All right, welcome to Enigma's Analysis. I'm your host, Mr. Enigma, and I am ready for some football. What's that? Still 2 months away? Oh. In any case, today we're covering a division that will be as hotly contested as any in the league, with the exception of maybe the NFC West. It's the AFC North. Now, as always, I will treat this analysis like I'm completely neutral and objective. Starting with, the Baltimore Ravens. There's not much to say there. They were awesome last year. They didn't lose a lot of guys. They'll be awesome again this year. Next. No. All right, let's get into it. John Harbaugh and company's transition to making this Lamar Jackson's team continues as they finished 14-2 last season. Who was the quarterback before they had Lamar Jackson? I can't think of his name. I can't even remember what he looks like.
Lamar Jackson has breathed new life into this franchise that was so stagnant with Joe Flacco under center. The Ravens are my pick to win the Super Bowl. Boy, it seems like it was a century ago.
Poor Joe Flacco. He seems like a nice guy. So the Ravens are a remarkably stacked roster, and they have a very unique game plan as Lamar Jackson just beats everybody with his legs. Most teams don't have athletic enough personnel to keep up with him, and they just keep finding more and more guys that they can run at you. This year they drafted running back J.K. Dobbins in the second round to add on to the group of Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, and whoever else they got running the ball. There's always the discussion that Lamar Jackson could still improve a little bit in the passing game, but he's definitely not bad in that department. Still, generally speaking, it's common knowledge at this point that if you want to beat the Ravens, you got to shut down the running game and force Jackson to throw it. Even at that, though, it's hardly a guarantee for victory. Basically, the Ravens are becoming like the Saints of the AFC. They always have one of the best rosters from top to bottom, few holes in it. They dominate the regular season, and then they can't get it done in the playoffs. I think it's because their offense is a little bit of a gimmick, even if it is a very successful one. And even though they haven't lost a lot of games, it seems like the really good coaches or the really good teams are figuring them out a little bit. You gotta wonder this season, especially as tough as their division rivals are, if more coaches have game tape of how to beat them and if that affects their overall record. This group doesn't yet have any star wide receivers, but there seems to be a belief that Marquise Brown is going to become one. It doesn't seem to matter much because the Ravens like to use their tight ends, particularly Mark Andrews. The offensive line is absolutely fantastic last season. Ronnie Stanley is as good as they come at left tackle, and he's back, but they did lose Marshall Yanda at left guard. At left guard now, they're probably going to have Bradley Bozeman, who's so-so, and then on the right side, they got DJ Fluker from Seattle, which is not the most assuring choice. Matt Skura is decent at center, and Orlando Brown Jr. at right tackle is very good at pass protection, not so much at run blocking. So while the O-line might not rate as highly on Pro Football Focus or whatever, it's all mitigated a little bit by the fact that it takes defenses the entire play to figure out which of the 72 guys you're going to hand the ball off to. So I suspect the unit will be just fine. Defensively, Brandon Williams is the only major name returning on the line. They picked up Derek Wolfe from the Broncos, and somehow they got Calais Campbell for a 5th-round draft pick. So essentially the D-line's a lot bigger than it was last season, and it should be pretty good. The linebacking group's a bit of a mixed bag. Matthew Judon is excellent. Tyus Bowser had a good year. They drafted Patrick McQueen with the 28th overall pick, and we've seen with teams like the Steelers that a rookie middle linebacker can be very viable. Jalen Ferguson in his rookie season last year got off to a slow start, but got better as things progressed. And LJ Fort, former Steeler, is a depth piece. Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters make up one of the best cornerback duos in the league. Tavon Young, their nickel corner, was injured for last season, so it's entirely possible their secondary could get even better. And Earl Thomas and Chuck Clark are an outstanding safety duo. So yes, the defense is going to be great once again. So it's not even a question if the Ravens are going to be good or not this year. It's mostly a matter of how good their division rivals are, how well teams have studied tape on them, and if they're athletic enough to pull off whatever they have planned, and can they get over the playoff hump. My prediction right now has the Ravens going 11-5, which might seem a little low, but most teams don't generally repeat 14-2 seasons. And if you've been watching all these videos, you'll know that I only have 2 teams in the league with a better record than 11-5. So you'll have to stay tuned to find out if I have them winning the division. In the playoffs, I actually do have them finally winning a game or two, but I don't have them going all the way. I think they get stopped in the conference finals. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the Cincinnati Bengals. Cincinnati was weirdly caught up in one off-season storyline. The New England Patriots got caught illegally recording their practice sessions. Why anyone would think they'd need to cheat the Bengals is beyond me. Seriously, how important could that footage have been? Yeah, Mr. Belichick? Yeah, I got the Cincinnati Bengals footage. I don't think you're going to need it. No, you should be fine without it. Oh crap, I've been spotted. I gotta go. I guess the Patriots weren't too upset that they lost that footage. The Bengals' second-year head coach Zach Taylor is a complete question mark. We really have no way of measuring how good he is or will be, and you can't hold it against them for going 2-14 with last year's roster. I have very limited college expertise, but I do suspect that Joe Burrow will be a good NFL quarterback. Not necessarily some transcendent star is going to carry a franchise, though. I will give him huge credit for one thing, though. During this whole draft process, he's kept up a great game face whenever asked about being a Bengal. I get the feeling a lot of players would not have been as polite about being drafted by a 2-14 team.
So, Joe, how do you like being a Cincinnati Bengal?
It's great. So good, bad, or in between, the Bengals are rolling with a rookie quarterback this season. At running back for the last few seasons, Joe Mixon and Giovanni Bernard together have been in the average to slightly above average window. Having said that, Mixon quietly had a 1,000-yard season last year. I suspect that he'll do well if the rest of the team does well. AJ Green is coming back, which is exciting. In his absence, Tyler Boyd caught for over 1,000 yards last year. John Ross III is a good number 3 receiver, and they drafted T. Higgins in the second round. Tight ends CJ Uzoma and Drew Sample are there for blocking. But regardless of whatever else you can say about the Bengals, they now have a pretty strong wide receiver core. Then there's the offensive line. Oh boy. Last year they drafted a promising left tackle who was injured for the whole year. Everyone else on the O-line is well below average, including new addition Xavier Su'a-Filo. So those skill position players are going to have to be pretty darn good to make up for it. Poor Burrow is going to have to make a lot of quick decisions. Defensively, you wouldn't know it by their poor stats against the run, but the defensive line can be pretty good. They're just inconsistent. They got a big grab in DJ Reader from the Texans. Carlos Dunlap and Geno Atkins are established veterans, but they each had down seasons last year. Carl Lawson had a solid bounce-back year after being injured for 2018, and Sam Hubbard has come along as a good defensive end. Now, for quite a while now, the Bengals have had issues with their linebackers. This season, the situation is very bleak. They grabbed a very average Josh Bynes from the Ravens. Then they have a similarly mediocre Jermaine Pratt and a third-round rookie they just drafted. Oof. At cornerback, they grabbed the Vikings' Trey Waynes, who will be their new number 1, and then they've got Mackenzie Alexander in the slot. Both are definitely improvements over what they had, but the Vikings were willing to part with all their cornerbacks because they weren't playing especially well. William Jackson will play out the final deal of his rookie contract at cornerback number 2, so it's a little hard to be excited about the position group. Jesse Bates is a decent free safety, and the newly acquired Von Bell, who they got from the Saints at strong safety, is very good at stopping the run. So my guess is that Cincinnati's secondary will be so-so. But basically, the offense is going to have to carry the team this year, which is asking for a lot considering that their offensive line is bad and they have a rookie quarterback. It sounds a lot like the Arizona Cardinals were last year, including that they're in a stiff division. But the NFL's topsy-turvy. The Bengals will get some wins over some bad teams, maybe 1 or 2 upsets on good ones. I'll say they go 5-11, which, But hey, look, they went 2-14 last season, so the only way to go is up. At least Cincinnati fans can say they're trending in the right direction. This year, 5-11. Next year, the Super Bowl. There's excitement in the air in Cleveland as the Browns now have a head coach who doesn't seem like some random customer they found at a Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Excuse me, sir. How would you like to be the new head coach of the Cleveland Browns?
Please, a man has to have standards. As a Steelers fan, I'm supposed to hate the Cleveland Browns, and I guess I do, but I genuinely feel a little sorry for them and their fans. The franchise is just so far removed from any kind of success. The Browns are like a kid who's owned a video game for years but has never even seen the final boss. The team probably thinks that the playoffs are just some myth, some bedtime story that parents read to their kids. Alright boys, I hope you studied your playbooks hard last night. I've been getting a lot of questions about what playoffs are, so I'm going to cover that today. Webster's Dictionary defines playoffs as a series of games or matches as between the leading teams of 2 leagues in order to decide a championship. Yeah, right, Baker. It's like a tournament. Exactly. Miles, put that helmet down. All the same, I have a good feeling about Kevin Stefanski. He seems like a real coach. Hopefully he can keep Baker Mayfield from storming out of interviews when he gets questions asked that he doesn't like. I think Baker's good enough to be successful if the rest of his team is really good, which I suspect that it is this season. Still, I would love to see him get replaced by Case Keenum, who they grabbed in the offseason. And yes, while they should roll with Mayfield, can you really argue that at this point in his career he's done any better than Case Keenum? Either way, whoever's under center has lots of weapons. Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are an absolutely vicious running back duo. With that in mind, line and Kevin Stefanski's background, I suspect the Browns are going to become a very run-heavy team, which is just fine. The wide receiver trio of Odell Beckham Jr., Jarvis Landry, and Rashad Higgins is brutal on paper, but so far Odell Beckham Jr. has definitely been a disappointment in Cleveland. Hopefully for them it's just an issue of chemistry between him and Baker and they can figure that out. Austin Hooper is their new toy at tight end who they got from the Falcons. In the meantime, David Njoku has had a really injury-riddled career and he actually just asked for a trade right before this video was recorded. Aside from coaching, the thing that really killed the Browns last season was their offensive line, which at the tackle positions was really bad. They drafted the 10th overall pick to fill in at left tackle. Meanwhile, Joel Platonio was a bright spot at left guard, so he's back. It's a similar situation with J.C. Treader at center. Wyatt Teller at right guard is okay, and all three interior positions seem to be better at pass protection than at run blocking. They got Jack Conklin at right tackle from the Titans, which should help immensely. So assuming Jedrick Wills is up to the task at left tackle, the offensive line for the Browns should be one of the better ones in the league, which will help immensely in the Browns becoming the offensive juggernaut that they probably imagined themselves being. Last season, the defense was surprisingly bad against the run, but very good against the pass. Of course, Myles Garrett's suspension really hurt them. He's an absolute beast, even when he's not assaulting people on the field. Poor Mason Rudolph still has PTSD from his dealings with Garrett, but that's neither here nor there. Olivier Vernon is good when he can stay healthy, but has had trouble doing so. Sheldon Richardson is also good. Meanwhile, Larry Ogunjobi is a good pass rusher, but really doesn't do much against the run. So as long as everyone avoids any suspensions, the D-line should be good. Things aren't looking as rosy for the linebacking core since losing Joe Schobert. BJ Goodson is totally average. Then Sion Takitaki and Mac Wilson are each going into their second years, but they were similarly forgettable. At cornerback, I definitely think Denzel Ward's a good number one. Greedy Williams is going into his second year after being drafted really high, but he's yet to really show that he deserved it. At free safety, they're really going to miss Demarius Randall because they've got a third-round rookie taking his spot. They got Carl Joseph from the Raiders at strong safety, which isn't bad. He's especially good at stuffing the run. So I think the outlook on the Browns' defense is average. I think well-coached offenses will do well against them, so their offensive weapons are going to have to do the heavy lifting. But unlike the offseason hype train from the year prior, I think as long as everybody keeps their expectations reasonable, the Browns are in for a very good year. And with 7 playoff spots, this is a great year for a team to be right on the cusp of a playoff berth. I think Stefanski wrangles these guys to a 9-7 record, and I might even put them higher if they weren't in such a good division. Because they'd most likely lose any tiebreakers, I'll have them as the number 7 seed going into the playoffs. I'll give them a wild card loss in the first round, but hey, the Cleveland Browns will have made the playoffs. And if that's not headline making news in the NFL, I don't know what is. I don't have anything else to add. What's that? What do I think of the Pittsburgh Steelers? Oh, I'm glad you asked. Let's call a spade a spade. This team's going to live or die based on how good Ben Roethlisberger is coming back. That's keeping in mind that they have an absolute top 5 defense. I mean, the defense last year was just otherworldly, carrying a team when they had an offense that really might as well not even shown up to the game. I mean, there were times when Devin Duck Hodges was starting that they had Paxton Lynch as their backup quarterback. I'm pretty sure that if Hodges and Lynch had gone down last season, the next man up would have been the equipment manager. They also had a really young group of wide receivers, and they lacked both a quarterbacks and wide receivers coach. I guess it's possible that, God forbid, if Mason Rudolph ends up taking any snaps this year, that he'll be better now that he's got a quarterback coach. But nobody in Pittsburgh wants to have to rely on that. It would have made me feel better if they had gotten a decent backup quarterback, but for the cap space they had, there wasn't much available. A lot of people were adamant that they should have gotten Jameis Winston, which they could have afforded, but the Steelers already have one interception-prone quarterback who most likely sexually assaulted someone in his younger days. Thank you very much. One is plenty. James Conner's an acceptable starting running back when he's healthy, which is never. Boy, the wind's really blowing strong. Oh, my back. Hey, kitty cat. Oh, my leg. Oh, my shin. Oh, my shoulder. I felt my shoulder tear. I can't play Sunday. Jalen Samuel's a good third down pass catcher, but we saw last season that he shouldn't be the starting all-purpose back. It hurt even more that they didn't have their fullback, Roosevelt Nix, so he's been replaced by the other Watt brother, Derek. I do wish that they would have grabbed a reliable veteran. Carlos Hyde was available for about $3 million a year before the Seahawks grabbed him. The dude ran for over 1,000 yards with the Texans' offensive line. The Steelers' offensive line has long been good, but they did have a bit of a down season last year. I'm sure part of that was because defenses played the run every time, having absolutely zero fear of the quarterback throwing the ball. With defenses no longer able to stack the box, I think the offensive line is going to be better this time around, especially since they got Steven Wisniewski from the Chiefs Admittedly, Ramon Foster had been on the downslope for the last few years of his career. He retired. Otherwise, it's the same guys, though. Villanueva at left tackle, Pouncey at center, DeCastro at right guard, and Matt Filer most likely at right tackle. The young wide receiver group has infinite potential, but they just need a quarterback like, say, Ben Roethlisberger to help them unlock that potential. Juju Smith-Schuster's on the final year of his rookie contract after having a really bad season last year, even taking into account the quarterback situation. James Washington showed some huge flashes last year, and Deontay Johnson in his rookie year not only did great in the passing game, but even returned a punt for a touchdown. I assure you, it's been a long time since the Steelers have been any kind of threat in terms of kick returns. The only thing, aside from experience, that the group was really lacking was height. So they drafted Chase Claypool in the second round. He's super fast and he's big. A lot of people think of him almost as a tight end. Speaking of which, last season Vance McDonald utterly disappeared. Normally his issue is that he struggles to stay healthy and has a little bit of a tendency to fumble, but when he's on, he's on. He seems to have really good chemistry with Roethlisberger. Perhaps more importantly though, they got Eric Ebron from the Colts, another at times excellent tight end who has a tendency to get injured a lot. But if even the majority of them can stay healthy, Roethlisberger has an array of absolute weapons. Johnson, Washington, Smith-Schuster, James Conner, Vance McDonald, Eric Ebron. There's going to be a lot more scoring this season. All but one starter returns on defense this year, which, as we've established, is very good news. I mean, seriously, just imagine how good they can be when they don't have to be on the field for 80% of the game. The only loss they suffered was Javon Hargrave on the defensive line, who went to the Eagles, which admittedly is probably a bigger loss than most people realize. But the trade-off is that Stephon Tuitt, who's had a hard time staying healthy, will hopefully be healthy this year, and he's an absolute game wrecker, so that might be a worthy trade-off. Remember, they still got an all-star in Cam Hayward. Tyson Alualu has been really good since they grabbed him a couple years ago. They also picked up Chris Wormley from the Ravens as a little depth piece. They've led the league in sacks 2 years in a row, so let's make it a third. At linebacker, TJ Watt, of course, is an absolute beast. They overpaid for Bud Dupree for this 1 year on the franchise tag, but hey, he was really good last year, so let's keep it going. Devin Bush right from the jump was great in his rookie year, although he was actually a little bit better in the first half than the second. I seriously doubt that's telling in any way, though, and since he's been there to help solidify the middle linebacker position, Vince Williams has been excellent as well. Bush has the mobility, Williams is a straight bull rusher. At corner, everybody pretty much knows how great Joe Hayden is, and then Steve Nelson at number 2 is one of the most underrated at his position in the league. Actually, Mike Hilton's really underrated at slot corner, too. Anyone who was paying attention to the Steelers last season realizes that trading for Minkah Fitzpatrick absolutely changed their season. He hasn't even played with them for a full season yet. This is his first offseason with the team. Terrell Edmonds is good enough at strong safety, and since the rest of the defense is excellent, it masks any deficiencies he might still have. There's still potentially room for him to improve. So there's no holes in their defensive starting lineup. You could debate how good their depth is, but really, you could say that about most teams, I would think. So the Steelers have a very high ceiling this season, and given that they went 8-8 as bad as their offense was, their floor is not that low. Still, there's going to be a huge difference between how the season will look if Ben returns to form or if he's still hurt or gets hurt again in some way or another. I'm realistic, though. It would be a little ridiculous to go into fanboy mode and say the Steelers are going to win it all. But I do think a lot of people are underestimating just how good the Steelers could be this season. Right now, I've got an optimistic but entirely realistic 10-6 for the Steelers, which means that, yes, I am saying the Ravens are going to win the AFC North. And right now, I'm saying the Steelers make it to the divisional round of the playoffs. In that scenario, to be honest, they could end up losing to the Ravens in the playoffs, which, God, I hope that doesn't happen. But all the same, after missing it for the last couple of years, just making it into the playoffs will be a nice start. So there's my prediction for the AFC North. I got the Ravens winning it at 11-5. I got the Steelers at 10-6. The Browns at 9-7. All three of those teams making the playoffs. And then the poor Bengals at 5-11. See, I think that's fairly reasonable. Not too biased, right? Let me know in the comment section what you think. Is it utterly ridiculous to not have the Ravens record be even higher? Is it possible in the NFL in 2020 that 3 teams will go to the playoffs from the same division? Is it finally the Browns' time, or are they just getting ready to disappoint again? If you enjoyed the video, consider liking it or subscribing to my channel. Thank you for watching. Enigma out.